Hey, what's up, guys? This is a follow-up video to the last one I did about creation science predictions and predictions that the Bible makes. So we're going to be looking at a biblical creation science model here and the predictions that it would make, because I still hear all these evolutionists saying, oh, well, creation scientists don't make predictions. That's not true at all. At all. I'm going to give you a whole nother list um, of more predictions that we make as creation scientists. Also, shout out to Matt Man. He really helped me out a lot this week, and he also sent me over some of the things that I'm going to be talking about in this video. So I figured I'd give him a shout out. He's got some really good content on his page as well. I'll see if I can link it up in the description or something like that. But I don't know much about YouTube, so wish me luck. All right, so genetic predictions. Obviously, the genetic predictions that we're going to make as creation scientists are really going to be completely against evolutionary predictions, obviously, and mainstream science predictions. But when we look at the actual data, it tells us which one of us is right. So um, we would predict that all humans are related, and we would predict that all human genetics can be traced back to one male and one female. Um, and science confirms both of these things. So that's looking good so far for the creation model here. Also, um, tracing back the origins of human life through genetics, we find that human life arose in the Middle East, just as the Bible says. All right, so genetic entropy. This is a big one for the evolutionists. This is where they really start to get upset because it totally proves their theory completely wrong, and it's exactly lines up with what our theory would say. Because of the fall and because of the curse of the Garden of Eden, we see our genetics slowly fading, just as the Bible tells us. Um, Also, the strongest genetics are traced back to the Middle East, always. That's no surprise for the creation scientists, in a biblical worldview. That's what the Bible told us. Um, so another thing we would predict as creation scientists is we would hear legend of this golden age, as it's called, of people living to be extreme ages. And so when we look at ancient cultures and ancient history, there are these legends of a golden age. Surprise, right? So um, all throughout the world and all throughout history, we hear legends of this golden age. Why is that? Could everybody just be making it up, or did people used to live a lot longer than people live nowadays? Well, when we study genetics and genetic entropy, and really entropy of the entire universe, it tells us why. We used to be a lot stronger genetically. And that matches up perfect with what the Bible would say is contrary to mainstream science or evolution. But I mean, the data shows who's right. This isn't us picking and choosing here. This is the reality of the situation. Our genetics are deteriorating over time. Um, we see IQ depleting. We see reaction time depleting. We see physical strength and speed depleting as time goes on. There are roughly 100 mutations per person per generation, and 99.99999% of these mutations are either neutral or bad. There's a very, very, very few that are actually beneficial mutations, and that's still in question of whether that's even the case or not. We know it's not adding information to a genetic code. Now, whether or not it'd be beneficial, that's the new discussion to be had. Um, but um, also, I wanted to point out how this lines up with what the Bible says about marriage, and a lot of people have a problem with the Bible talking about Adam and Eve Adam and Eve had children, and those children married each other and had children, people go, well, isn't that incest? Yes, it really is, but this wasn't a problem back then because of how strong the genetic code was and how there weren't any mutations in the genetic code yet. So they could marry their brother or their sister and have kids with them, and they're fine. And that's why the Bible doesn't ban incest until Exodus. God saw all these mutations occurring and arising, and he said, "All right, no more of that because we're going to start having problems." So that fits perfectly. Fits perfectly. All right, so creation scientists would also say that animals take forth after their kind, which is all we see in the real world. Evolutionists have a wild imagination about this topic, but what does the data show? Exactly what the Bible says. Animals will take forth after their kind. Um, and this is actually one of the evolutionary predictions was that a human Y chromosome would be very close to a chimp Y chromosome because the Y chromosome doesn't change very often at all. Um, but in fact, they are completely different. Completely different. Um, Almost, I think it was like 46% different or something ridiculous. So I mean that shows us that no, man did not come from chimps. I mean, if you needed help with that. Anyways, um, we would also predict that we're not going to find any junk DNA or vestigial structures in the body. And for a while, scientists did think that there were vestigial structures, but the more we learned about the human body, the more we realized, oh, these aren't vestigial. We just didn't know what that did yet. And so that's the real problem. And that's the same thing with junk DNA. We thought there was, well, evolutionists thought there was all this junk DNA that like didn't really serve a purpose, and the more we study it, the more we learn that it does serve a purpose. We just don't know yet. And the more we discover, the more it shows us that no, there are no extra parts, there are no spare DNA sections. No. All right, so one of the first predictions made by creation scientists is they went out and they said, I bet there are laws that run and govern this universe. And in fact, there are. We find new laws all the time. The laws of thermodynamics, gravitational laws, everything else. So why would this infinite universe be governed by these laws? The only answer is there's a lawmaker. Somebody made it that way, and we find laws in science and mathematics. Which, if you saw my video about mathematics, it's irrefutable that this is something created this and made it that way on purpose. All right, so language. This is a big one that evolutionists have a big problem with. I'm not going to get into all the details, so I'm trying to keep this video short. I'm already up to 9 minutes. Oh my gosh. Anyways, only humans have language, and a prediction that creation science would make is no animal is going to evolve a language with grammar structure and blah blah blah. They want to make it seem like, oh, cavemen were grunting and they decided this means this grunt and this means that grunt. No, that's not how it works. That's not how language arises. Language doesn't just arise. You can talk to somebody that studies the subject, and they'll tell you, it's not something that just you slowly evolve. The Bible teaches us that God taught Adam, so that's no problem for us. This is some things that are really just irrefutable. We find biblical findings. I mean, what the Tower of Babel inscription was found, so that proves that the Tower of Babel was a real place. They believe they found the Ark of the Covenant. They believe they found Noah's Ark. And this last one's just insane to me. Pharaoh's army remains in the Dead Sea. They found 400 full skeletons. They found weapons. They found pieces of war chariots all within the Dead Sea. There's no signs of boats or ships, so they weren't sailing over the Dead Sea when they drowned or whatever. They were walking on dry ground, and um, and the waters closed in on them, and that's why they're stuck in layers of clay and rocks, um, rather than just laying there. They're stuck inside of clay and rocks, and this implies either a mudslide or a tidal wave type of thing. And what does the Bible say happened? The the walls of the ocean closed in on them, and we find evidence of this. I mean, we found 400 full skeletons. The evolutionists go out and they find a tooth in the ground, or two little shards of a skull, and they put together a whole theory and sketch out a half human, half ape creature, and it's broadcasted all over the news. Where is this on the news? So another prediction that we would make as creation scientists, or at least from a biblical model, is that the Bible tells us that all animals and humans were vegetarian before the flood. So the prediction would be that all animals, even carnivorous animals, will be able to survive off of only plants, and this is true. Um, um, Also, this is another thing that evolutionists try to use to show like common ancestry. They talk about certain animals have certain teeth that imply a certain diet and all this and that. Well, at the end of the day, they can all survive off of plant-based diets. So, kind of refutes that point right there. I decided I'm gonna cut this video in half and make it two separate sections. So, thanks for watching part one, guys.